Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Heartbeats of Adapted PE podcast. We're so excited that you are joining us today. I'm your host, Jen Heebink, and I'm excited to share that we have our season finale today. So that's fun. I am an adapted PE teacher from 40 miles outside the Twin Cities, just outside Minneapolis. And the Heartbeats of Adapted PE podcast is a podcast that is here to connect adapted PE teachers, teacher voices. We want to raise up those teacher voices, and we are here to celebrate both the heart, which is the storytelling, and the beat, celebrating the daily rhythms of our routine in our essential field. And again, we want to amplify those adapted PE teacher voices and those who support all students. So we're telling stories and we're sharing about the daily rhythms of our life. The Heartbeats of Adapted PE podcast is brought to you by Fit and Fun Playscapes, and you can check them out on X at Fit and Fun Play. And they have been here for the last year, keeping our microphone going. And so we're just so grateful for them. We're going to do a big shout out to them at the end of the podcast today for season 1. So I just like our mission to connect and support all teachers and people who support all students. Fit and Fun is one of those companies that really lives to help all people be active. So thank you so much for Fit and Fun for this last year of our podcast. Please check them out. Also, shout out to all of our PE teachers who are at the Shape America convention this week. Adapted PE, health teachers, physical education teachers. I'm so glad that you're tuning in. If you're tuning in from Kansas City, my heart is there. I'm so sad that I can't be there, but every time I go, I just feel like I have a just giant family and a family reunion. And it's good to see those people that I look forward to every year. And I'm just so sad I can't be there. So just a high five and a shout out to all those people who are getting their professional development this week in Kansas City. And I know some of you had some travel issues getting to Kansas City this week. Oops, our bad. Minnesota snowstorm and Wisconsin snowstorm. But in all seriousness, I want to wish you all just a great convention. And good luck to all those teachers of the year. I'm wearing my Teacher of the Year shirt. I was the 2022 Shape America National Adapted PE Teacher of the Year. And we will be finding out who those teachers of the year will be, I believe, on Friday for the 2026, right? So I was 2022, and we're now like 5 years out of that. That is wild. Just feels like yesterday. So now if you listened to season 1, episode 12, which was our last episode, you heard me talk about the thing that doesn't get talked about. Moving out of burnout as an educator. And it's something that all of us educators at some point in our careers are going to have to deal with. Where do we find the joy and how do we keep going? That is my last episode. So if you are a teacher or just anyone who just feels burnt out, I wish that you could go and listen to that episode. So maybe just go check it out. So just moving through those valleys and the mountains of teaching, the roller coaster of teaching. I share some frameworks in there to help us move through some of those deep feelings we have as teachers. So I'd love for you to listen to it. And especially if you're just feeling a little burnt out, go check that out. And next, with World Down Syndrome Day around the corner on Saturday, March 21st, I want to bring you a guest whose family has been deeply impacted, not only from a kid who rocks his extra chromosomes, but also they've impacted my life as a teacher, because I feel like with every kid, I learn a lot, and I feel like this kid really, really impacts me. And so I am going to bring on Penny Kauffman. So welcome, Penny. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about you and brag about you for a minute. So Penny Kauffman is the mom of one of my former students, Kyle, who is not only rocking the extra chromosomes, but he just really took our school captive with his personality, with his love, with his kindness, and truly his leadership. And Penny has raised Kyle to be a leader and also has been a dreamer in her own life and a visionary for him and the community. So I can't wait to share what we've got planned for you today. Hi, Penny.
Hi, Jen. Thanks
Welcome
for
to the
having me.
podcast. Yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Can you share a little bit about your background and maybe a little bit about your family, how many kids and all that? Like, what's going on in the Kauffman fam?
Yeah. Well, I've been married to Chris for 30 years. We live in the same community that Jen teaches at. We've been in the school district for 27 years. We have 3 kids. Lindsay is our oldest, and then Kyle's 25, and he has Down syndrome. And then we also have a daughter who's, Lindsay's 26, and then Carly is 22. Yeah, I worked in the healthcare field for a long time before we had kids. I got married later in life. I was quite a bit older when I had my kids, and so as soon as I had my kids, then I decided to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom. So I was kind of blessed with being able to stay at home, but
That's
my husband
awesome.
still works, so
He's still going.
he's still going. Yep, it's all good.
Still going. And you shared just an awesome story that Kyle recently had his lifelong dream come true. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Kyle's been fascinated for many years with people's tattoos. I don't know why, but it's always a conversation starter for him that he will just randomly just talk to people about their tattoos. He's just fascinated with them. And, we would occasionally just get him, like those henna tattoos, that they were just temporary tattoos, and he liked those, but he's always wanted his own. And so he turned 25 this year. It was his golden birthday. His birthday's on February 25th. And so his sister was kind of the catalyst, his youngest sister, Carly, the catalyst for him getting a tattoo, because she also wanted to get the Lucky Few tattoo, which is the tattoo that people get if they know somebody who has Down syndrome. It's 3 like chevron arrows representing the extra chromosome that people with Down syndrome have. And so, yeah, they decided for his birthday that they were going to get the tattoo, and he was so excited. There was 3 people in the group that got the tattoo, and Kyle just intently watched, and he went last. But he said it felt like, if you were to ask him, he would tell you that it felt like a cat scratch, and it was over quick, and he is pretty proud of it.
I'm so excited. I hope someday I get to see his tattoo and that we can talk about it.
Oh yeah, you will. You will.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So kind of going back, because I think I want to have families who have kids with Down syndrome, or maybe they're just getting their diagnosis, right? To kind of go back to the beginning, because you guys have kind of lived through Kyle's early childhood to adulthood now, just to like kind of give hope and like just open some eyes about what life with Kyle is like. And so I want to know, when you were pregnant with Kyle, who's, like you said, the second oldest, were there any indication that he could have Down syndrome, or did you find out right when he was born?
Yeah, there were no indicators. I mean, there was lots of, it's not like now where they have all these, 3D ultrasounds and stuff that they do. They didn't have a lot of that back, this 25 years ago. So there wasn't any indicators that were glaring that he had trisomy 21. And so we just didn't do any of the extra testing. I think back then they had like a triple screening that you could do to see if there were any indicators for Down syndrome. So we just opted out of all of that. And then I ended up having a C-section, and that's when we found out that Kyle had Down syndrome.
Okay. So it's kind of a surprise. So when, what were some of the things that were said in the room, or what were some of the feelings that you had as you heard that your baby had Down syndrome?
Well, immediately, Kyle was not in great shape when he was born. He had a pretty significant heart defect. So I didn't know that he was born at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't find out until 2 o'clock in the afternoon that he actually had Down syndrome. And it was very quiet. They didn't educate people very well back then about, if there's something wrong with your baby. So you were kind of left to be in the room while they were tending, to him and trying to figure out what was going on and the best, practice of what to do with him, and if he needed to stay at the hospital or, go to another trauma center. So The communication was really limited, and very, very limited resources, that were given to me and to Chris. So we were kind of left with like reeling in he's never gonna. He's
Mm,
never going to do this. He's never going to do that. He's going to live with us the rest of our lives. We didn't know anybody in our immediate circle of friends or family that had anybody with a disability that significant as Down syndrome. And so it was kind of a dark place, to be honest, because Kyle
yeah.
didn't stay at the hospital that he was born at. He ended up having to go to Children's Hospital. And so it was rough, having to stay at the hospital. He's at a different hospital. You don't really know the complexities of everything going on. So we were kind of left, it was kind of left to our imagination to kind of figure out,
Yeah.
life. And thankfully, after a couple of weeks, we were able to get in touch with the Down Syndrome Association of Minnesota, and they, definitely had some more resources that were current. The hospital had very antiquated resources to give us.
Yeah. I just think like nowadays, I feel like there are so many more organizations that are willing to like reach out like right away,
Yeah.
as soon, like I feel like the nurses and doctors even have more resources. So it's really interesting to see how far we've come in that.
Thankfully.
Thankfully, yeah, because, and, thank goodness that Kyle was even born, in this time and age, because, years and years before, like it would have been an even different story, right? So,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And so when thinking back to Kyle in like early childhood, did he meet all of his early motor milestones? What was like the kind of the early pre-K milestone, even some of the school stuff, if you want to talk about, if you remember some of the pre-K stuff?
Yeah. He was very delayed. He probably crawled at age 1. He walked at age 2. He wasn't completely potty trained until age 6. And thankfully we had all of the, the therapies that were coming out, the speech, the OT, the, PT, we had all of those people coming out to help us, to get to those milestones. But people with Down syndrome just, tend to hit their milestones, significantly later. And so he didn't start kindergarten until he was 6, because we really wanted him to be fully potty trained before he actually, went to kindergarten. So yeah, he was pretty significantly, delayed in most areas, I'd say, as a typical kindergartner entering.
Okay. And was there ever a point kind of early on when you realized, oh gosh, this is going to be harder than we thought? Or was it just life as usual, just knowing that he would just need a lot of additional support?
To be honest with you, a lot harder.
A lot harder.
A lot harder. Yeah. I had Lindsay and Kyle and Carly all within 40 months. So the household was chaotic, and the demands of therapies that you have when you have a child with a disability, they're not only demands from, like the early childhood stuff, but you've got demands, outside of you're taking them to speech, you're taking them to OT and PT, and, transitioning from, like for me, I transitioned from being, in the workplace, and then all of a sudden I'm transitioning home, and now I'm, a mom, and then I'm dealing with a child with a disability. And it was like baptism by fire for me. It was a lot to take in and understand. And, you don't really know for sure if you're doing the right thing at the right time. And, you just had to really lean into the, people within the district too had, they were like my lifeline too, the early childhood and all the resources that were given to me, and then just to know too, like, well, he is meeting this milestone, so there was those little bits of hope that you would get, like, oh yeah, we're working towards that, and we're going to get there, he will be able to do this, or, that we're working towards it, just like even with walking.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't walk until he was 2. We didn't know, is he going to walk or not? I'm not sure, but sure enough, he met that milestone too. It just takes a lot longer.
Yeah. Did you ever like think like, man, when is he going to do this? Like,
yeah,
I'm just thinking of a friend right now, and they're like, family's just like, man, we want him to do this. He's so close. When is he going to do this? And So I just feel like with those motor milestones, sometimes it is just like, we just got to be patient. He's going to
Yeah.
do it on his own time. Right.
Yeah. And yep. And they do. They'll get there.
They kind of just write their own timelines for
Yep.
some of those things. So talking about your other kiddos, Lindsay and Carly, who I absolutely adore. What was it like for Lindsay and Carly to grow up with a sibling with Down syndrome? Did you notice anything different from the way they would approach life with Kyle than potentially other families would?
No, I mean, because they didn't know any different, they
Mhm.
didn't have a typical brother, so they didn't really know anything. And I think for them, they liked it a lot. Because, Kyle was childlike for so long,
Yeah.
and he would play Barbies with them, and
Oh,
forever with them. They would dress him up, and so I think they liked that because he was just like part of the gang and just childlike for a lot longer than most typical brothers would have tolerated.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think they just obviously they have way more compassion for the disabled world. They see the need for, if there's somebody in need that needs help or somebody that's a little different, they definitely, have that compassion now, as adults.
Yeah, they have the eyes for that. I think they see it faster and are able to like approach with maybe a little bit more bravery than the average person would at their age.
Yeah.
And all three of your kids are super athletic. So let's talk about sports. So when did you start getting Kyle into sports? And kind of what were some of the perceptions that you encountered?
Yeah, he kind of started doing sports with like Lindsay. Like we would just put both of them in at the same time, because they're 3 days short of a year apart from each other. So
Okay.
they would be in the same age group, like for T-ball and stuff. So we would kind of just stick them both together and stuff like that. And soccer, we did a little soccer thing too when they were both little. But, eventually Kyle just couldn't keep up, and it just it was more for safety reasons than anything else. It wasn't really like parents saying, oh my goodness, Kyle shouldn't be doing this. He has Down syndrome. It was more just for safety reasons, that we pulled him. And then he got involved more with like, maybe 8, 9 years old. Then he started with Special Olympics. He did a Special Olympics hockey, and they had soccer, and trying to think what else he did. There was a lot of little adapted sports that he was able to do. And then once he got into like middle school, then the adapted sports started, in middle school for him. So, yeah, there's lots of opportunities out there, especially in Special Olympics.
Yeah, I feel like Special Olympics in our area is just really, really strong. And the families, once we get, a couple families out, the word gets out and everybody's there,
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
And he does unified football too, right? And some of those, does he do any unified other things?
Yeah, he does unified basketball and he does unified football. Those are both through St. Michael, the Stallions, that Special Olympics and Stallions. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I'm going to just do a little plug for Special Olympics. But Kyle's going to be on the USA team, because the games are coming here to Minnesota, and Kyle's on the unified flag football team for Team Minnesota.
And don't they have to do they live on campus and then they go do their stuff? So it's a really big deal. Like you get to you represent, and it's like living at college and just there to play football, which is really cool.
Yeah. And it's a whole week long. It's opening ceremonies. They take it pretty serious and give all the athletes quite an experience.
That's awesome. I'm hoping to make it to the opening ceremonies. I might have a way to get there. So fingers crossed for me, Penny, that I can get out there.
Nice.
So I'm just thinking about when Kyla was getting ready to go from elementary to middle school, were there any hesitations about Kyle going to middle school? What were some of the things you were thinking about? Did you think he was ready? Tell me about that.
Well, in elementary school, I did this thing early on. I know a lot of parents are somewhat hesitant about maybe reading a book about the disability that their son or daughter has. And I wasn't. I went in full speed ahead and just read a story that the Down Syndrome Association had. They had a great book about, what it's like to be or to have Down syndrome. So from like first grade on, I didn't hesitate to have that book read, so every class that Kyle went, or every grade level that Kyle was in, that book was always read. So the students
Mhm.
within that class knew that he had Down syndrome. And so then I also did this thing called Lunch Bunch in elementary school, where once a month I would bring in 3 or 4 students and for lunch, and we would have lunch with Kyle. It was more social. It was a social thing that we did too, but it was also a way for him to develop and foster relationships with his typical peers. And so we
Yeah.
did that. We did that throughout the year for, I don't even know how many years we did that. Enough where we cycled through all of the kids in his grade in elementary. So I feel like that foundation set him up for success when he got to middle school, because he had that core foundation of kids that knew he had Down syndrome, that knew he learned a little bit differently, that, he was gonna meet all the milestones. It's just gonna take him a little bit longer. And they were kind of his little, groupies, sort of. They kind of
Yeah.
protected him, watched over him as he, navigated into middle school with all of the other influx of all those other kids coming into the middle school. So, I mean, of course, I had all those, fears like anybody does, that he's going to be isolated. He's not going to have to be in, he won't be integrated with his peers. I was really worried about role modeling, because I really was a huge advocate for role modeling. I wanted typical peers to role model good behaviors for him. And so I had all of those kind of things that were kind of weighing in the back of my mind when he went to middle school, because,
Mhm.
it's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
Yep.
That's a whole new world,
Yep.
Yeah.
My own kid is in 6th grade, so I like I teach it, but then also like to have a kid in there, I'm like, oh my gosh. So
Yes.
yep. We're in it
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. So you have the same fears as,
Yep.
with a typical student as
Yep.
we do with, disabled students. Yeah. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys had unified, PE class too then. And, I feel like that was also kind of a good, I don't know, just a unifier, I think,
Mhm.
for him to be able to meet other students too, that were, and Bison Connection too, which
Yep.
maybe a lot of people don't know about what Bison Connection is, but
Yeah, Bison Connection. For those of you who, this is probably, maybe you have something like this at your school, so if you're out there, but it's a club for students with and without disabilities to come together and hang out, plan inclusive events. We do parties, just learn how to move together, and it's less like a class, more just like hanging out. Whereas Unified PE, we come together with students with without disabilities, and we're learning physical education and how to be lifelong movers together and it's based around student needs, right? So yeah, so I think Kyle might have had some student mentors in middle school, and I think Aiden was, maybe there's another student who was a part of that. So I remember that. And then when he got into high school, we did have that unified PE class, and he was in, I feel like, just the foundation of the inclusion movement. So tell me about Kyle's high school experience. What were some of the feelings that you had heading into the high school?
I mean, I think they kind of mimic a little bit, the same as middle school, but the isolation, I think, because the gap gets wider once they get into high school, and so you're not able to get his classes, the curriculum adapted, for him to be successful in the classroom anymore now that you're in high school. And then, just the fear that his little community of friends were going to go away, because now,
Yeah.
the peers, they're driving, they might have a relationship with a girl.
Yeah.
They're getting jobs, their life is moving way faster than what Kyle's was. And it's just all of those things that are just, that kind of hit you as a parent, that you're like, okay, these milestones, some of these we might not ever hit, especially like the driving, piece of it, and the going off to college. And so all of those things were just kind of, facing us, once he got to high school. So, but I don't know. He still had such a great experience with all of his friends. I don't know, that class that he was in they were just exceptional individuals.
They were so special. Like I am thinking back because I still know some of the names of that very, very first unified PE class and the kids that he hung out with. Like one of them's playing in the NFL. Like one of them and then his friend from 8th grade is, a lot of them were collegiate athletes.
Yeah.
I know at least 2 or 3 of them became PE teachers. And so they all just loved him, and Kyle loved them. Like just his personality just drew people to him, I feel like, in high school. And so as a result of that, like Kyle was with these other kids kind of just in this foundational, like I said, the foundation of the movement was in Kyle's year. And with Bison Connection, we saw from his freshman year, we just had like hangouts to his senior year. Like we were again with planning events, and we have a leadership committee and all this like opportunity. I just feel like it was more opportunity for our culture at Buffalo High School to come into more understanding and more opportunities to interact with people who are different than them. And I just think Kyle was just such a huge foundational building block of that movement. So when I think back to his year, like some of those kids, like you said, were just so wonderful.
Oh yeah, they're amazing. And some of them, still, he still is in contact with some of them, from high school, even though they're all graduated from college now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. And despite their, their lives moving faster than Kyle's, do you feel like Kyle's life kind of, it wasn't this, but it turned into that, right? So like we have like people doing off their own thing, but also Kyle's got his own thing in his community too. Like I mean, some of the things were negative, but most of it, like, was it unexpected for you to see all this, positively come out of, the kids that he graduated with? Was it unexpected, or you're like, oh man, like what did it do for you as a mom?
Yeah, I think for us it was just that genuineness of it,
Yeah.
Because like when Kyle was born, I thought, oh, nobody's gonna love him as much as they love Lindsay at the time, How could they? And then when you would see like just the community of kids that came around him in high school, they truly liked him. I mean, it wasn't fake. It wasn't like they were trying to be like, I don't know, just trying to seeking attention or anything because they were hanging out with the special ed kids. It was genuine. They really truly did like him and really included him. And I think that's what surprised me the most. But I think the other part of it is I think it did a lot for those kids too. I think it opened up their eyes to see that, he wants everything that you guys want. He does. He wants everything that you guys want. It just takes him a little longer to get there, but he wants everything that he wants to wear a jersey, just like you guys are wearing a jersey. It's the same. And I think once they were able to see that, like, then they just put Kyle in that category with them. Like, well, he's just one of the guys.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that surprised me because I didn't ever expect that as a mom when I got the diagnosis that he would ever be that included in a community in middle school, high school. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how life is surprising like that. And we're in a day and age where Kyle can have that effect on people and change people's minds. And I think back to, if you remember the unified basketball tournament, I think he maybe played once or twice, but the first year we did it, Kyle was on the news the first time. And you were there because you were there, and you went also to talk on the news about just the first, unified basketball tournament. And we had one team we brought 2 other teams from 2 other schools. And it turned into like the whole school was there. And Kyle is draining threes, right? He's a basketball guy. He's hanging out with his buds. So my first time running this tournament, I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna go. Like, I don't. And so tell me what you remember from watching that tournament, if you have any memories, and kind of what you were left with.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of goes back to that. I mean, first of all, I mean, it was emotional. I mean, just the crowd that was there, the teachers that showed up, because they didn't have to. They didn't have to bring their classes there to watch this and cheer everybody on. And then, just the students that came alongside all of our special ed kids, to help them to be successful, in basketball, whatever that was. I mean, maybe it was standing there and doing a granny shot 10 times until it went in. And then it was like success, and everybody cheered, that was probably the most heartwarming part of that. And then just, I guess, again, too, how genuine it was. It didn't seem forced. It seemed like all those kids, all the unified kids, they just wanted to be there, and they were so supportive and huge cheerleaders for our kids. And Kyle, like, it's like that same thing that I talked about. It's like putting on the uniform. They had their own thing. It was their own basketball game. It was their own, it was theirs to call their own. And they don't get those opportunities like the typical basketball team who plays however many games a season. They get that one shot at it. And it's so cool that it was special like that for them.
Yeah. And I remember that was the first time where I felt like we have Minnesota State High School League, where it's adapted sports. But we, our school is a part of a co-op. So we maybe have like one or two students that are involved, but this unified team allowed students with and without disabilities. And it was just, we had like 20 kids on the team. So it was like more engagement that way. Like, each one has its special purpose, but it also just kind of allowed the portal to sports to be wide open. And I remember as kids were walking out, they were like, I didn't know that was possible. And they're like, it's using basketball as as kind of a voice for inclusion, right? We're trying to have kids walk away and think about, well, that was cool because we included everybody. And so it's been kind of that tool for us to be able to open up some conversations about, who are sports for, and who can we support, and who can we notice in school that doesn't get noticed all the time. And so we still do the unified basketball tournament, and it is now, it's run the same way, but now we bring in the cheerleaders, and we have unified cheer, and we have unified. You can come. It's April 13th. We do it all day.
Kyle and I can come.
Oh, please come. Please come.
Okay.
Both Buffalo teams will play each other at the end of the day, but we're playing other teams all throughout the day too. So I'll give you more information on that, because that'll be fun. But then at halftime, at the end of the day, we do unified drumming. So it's our Bison Connection kids, and we put therapy balls on buckets and we drum on them. And so it's kind of like a dance performance, but we're drumming. Oh, it's the best. So like, again, that foundational piece for our school to have a place to grow into inclusion. And Kyle was just so much a part of that. And I want to share, when Kyle was a senior, he was homecoming king. And I got to share this story because I can't remember if I actually shared it with you. But when there was a pet fest for homecoming, and they were calling down all of the students who had been nominated for homecoming royalty. And Kyle decided, I'm not going to go to that. I'm just going to go to, my case manager's room. And they had called his name. I'm like, where is he? Like, this is your senior year. You need to be down here. This is a big deal. And so I literally sprinted down to the case manager, and I opened the door. I'm like, Kyle, you need to be down here. They called your name. You're on homecoming royalties. Like, oh, okay. And I was like, I think I might have dragged him. I'm sorry, Penny, but I grabbed his hand and I ran down the hallway, and I opened up the door, and I I might have pushed him into the, because
Yeah.
he's so not, he likes people, but he is kind of like, you know, in certain things, he doesn't like to be like center of attention all the time.
No.
But I literally, I pushed him in onto the court where all the other seniors were, and the crowd just went wild. I got him there right at the last minute. And then, so then the news, you know, comes and they do the whole story about him too. And then he is voted homecoming king. And I just think, man, if there is an exclamation point on your senior year, that would be it. And Kyle owned it. Like that was his crown and everybody loved him. And so his picture is forever on the hallway at our high school for his year homecoming king. Were you were probably there watching, so tell me as a mom, like what was that like for you to see him
when he was actually crowned?
Yeah, when he was crowned, when it was announced.
Yeah. I mean, he was overwhelmed. The whole situation, the whole homecoming thing was kind of overwhelming for him, you know, because it's a lot of crowds, it's noise. He didn't know what to expect. And so he was very apprehensive that night, even going there. But I mean, it was just heartwarming that, you know, the class body would think enough of him, you know, that they would want somebody, you know, with a disability to be there to represent their class as the homecoming king. I mean, that was a testimony to that class. I mean, that class of 2021. No, he graduated in 2020. 2020. Yeah, the class of 2020 was, that was a remarkable class, you know, that they were very, very inclusive and they were genuinely excited for him, you know, and Kyle was, you know, it wasn't his favorite thing, I will say, you know, like all of the stuff that you had to do after that, like the pep fest and the football game. And, you know, I don't even know that he went to the dance. So yeah, some of that stuff was just kind of a little bit too much for him because it was a little too overstimulating, but yeah, he still has his crown and his little scepter.
This just came to me. Did he do the polar plunge with us his senior year? Like right before, do you remember? I think it might have been right before everything shut down. Do you remember?
I don't think so.
Okay. That might have been the year after.
Yeah, I don't think he did. Yeah.
Okay.
Because in 2020 they had the drive-through graduation. So
yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't think so.
That makes sense. So just thinking, like, in all throughout history, it's always the parents that need to do the advocating for their kiddo with a disability. How do you feel like you've had to advocate for Kyle throughout his high school or just his whole school career in general?
I mean, I feel like, like I said before, I was thankful that I was able to be a stay-at-home mom because advocating for your child with a disability is like a part-time job.
Yep.
You know, you're fighting for an inclusive experience all the time. You know, I can remember advocating for, you know, him to just ride on the regular bus, you know, with his sisters, you know, not be on a special ed bus. He doesn't need to be on a special ed bus, those kind of things. Having a typical locker was important. I wanted him to have he didn't always have to go to the special ed hallway. I wanted him to be with his friends in middle school and high school and have a typical locker. He might not use it every day, but it's there for him if he wants to go and use that. You know, sitting with his peers at lunch rather than having to sit at the special ed table, you know, making curriculum adaptations. That was ongoing, you know, all the time. So we just really tried to set the bar high, and whether he met those expectations or not, it didn't matter, but I always wanted him to have not a segregated experience, but an inclusive experience.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what you spoke up for, like, showed by the time, like, when he was senior, you look back and, like, were there things that could have been better? Absolutely. But I think the way that you advocated for him, like, really paid off, like, with the people that he was with, you know, some of the experience that he had. And again, I keep going back to that, but like the foundational piece of the inclusion movement, a lot, like, sometimes it does come from parents, like, hey, we should think about doing this, you know, and then we're like, oh, you know, like, as teachers, like, sometimes it does, like, make our brains spin a little bit because we have to think creatively. But that's good for us. Like we want to always be looking for opportunities for our kids to grow. So, were you ever nervous about him transitioning out of high school into the next step? So back then it was age 20, 21, right? So you go to the transition programming, and then like once he hit 21, what did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, then he went to the transition program, that was offered through the high or through the district.
Yep.
They tend to, unfortunately, I mean, that's just where all of the special ed kids go. You don't have to go there, but a lot of them do. So it was hard for Kyle to transition there because now it was very apparent to him that all of his friends had moved on.
Yeah.
He was in a separate building. It was only, special ed kids. And yeah, it was a hard transition for him because, he wasn't doing the typical stuff that his friends were doing. So yeah, transition was really hard for him.
Yeah. I can
Hmm.
imagine. I always, some of the feedback I get back from families like yours is like, man, they just lose their community
Yeah.
because everybody's off doing their own thing, and that's the hard part because high school is so social, and
Yep.
that's where you have your friends, and then all of a sudden people off do their thing, go be adults, and so I get that feedback from a lot of families, and it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
Keep going. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then, they're working towards, their independence there too at, the transition program too. And,
Mm-hmm.
they're trying, to help them to get a job and, more independent life skills and things like that. But, it's just not enough time. I just feel like they don't have enough time. I feel like some of that stuff maybe should have happened like as early as middle school, to get them prepared
Yeah.
for life after. And maybe you guys are doing that. I have no idea, but I'm sure there's a lot of that stuff that's, changed since Kyle was there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep. Can you describe some of the issues that individuals with intellectual disabilities encounter in the real world when it comes to jobs? What have been and what are you still dreaming about to help Kyle and people with Down syndrome have jobs?
Yeah, well, like for Kyle, I mean, the statistics are really sad, like I'd say anywhere between 20 and 25% of people with Down syndrome are employed. 75% of them don't have a job, which is really sad. So employment is a huge barrier to success for our, like people like Kyle. Housing is another area that really needs to be overhauled. There isn't a lot of independent housing options out there for them to live independently, and that is a dream of Kyle's, is to be able to live independently someday. He does have a job. He works 2 jobs at Culver's, but those jobs came because of advocacy from from me. I took him to a regular job interview at Culver's in a nearby town, and he got the job, and it's unfortunate that I'm thankful I have the time to be able to advocate for him, but a lot of parents don't. And so that part is a bummer. And it's almost, impossible to find any like meaningful employment, like a meaningful day program. The wait lists are like 1 to 2 years to get into a day program. And there's just not a lot in our little, community out here. And the other barrier is transportation.
Yeah.
Kyle takes a cab to work, what it's really expensive. So it's just,
Yeah.
all these barriers that they have that, the typical population, the general people just don't have to deal with that in the daily. So,
Right. And like I said, looking back to the disability rights movement, it always, always, always starts with the parents saying, hey, this needs to be changed. And why does it have to be on their shoulders? Because they're the
yeah,
only ones that seem to understand, right? That you guys are living in it. And so it's like, who can we pull in to help us understand and make change? Like,
yeah,
and
it's,
it's exhausting. I bet. Like,
it's exhausting. I mean, I think I know, I mean, that I started a card company with Kyle, right after he graduated from high school and into his transition program. And we gave it all, we gave it everything for 4 years, trying to build a company that could, hopefully employ other people with disabilities. And yeah, we ended it just because, it never got to the goal and the dream that we really had for it. And that was, throwing everything that we had at it, into it,
Yep.
and it just didn't stick. But, yeah, you have to dream big.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. If you could, okay, here now looking at some reflective questions. If you could meet yourself on that first day when Kyle was born, finding out that Kyle has Down syndrome, what would you say to yourself?
I would tell myself that that you have no idea how much others are going to love him and
Mhm.
what an impact that he will have on other people. I mean, it's amazing how well loved he is by so many people. Yeah. 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 So
Just
not to be scared about that, but yeah,
yeah. He's
I was back
just
then.
so magnetic, and it's fun to like, not fun, but like when we think of like our future selves and we like think back to like where, like what would we say to ourselves, sometimes I ask our guests that question just to like get them thinking a little bit. And I love that answer, that he's just so loved and not to be afraid. If you could meet with other parents right now who are just getting their Down syndrome diagnosis for their kiddo, what would you say to them?
I would tell him to love that child like any other child. Don't treat him any differently. Dream big for him, advocate forever and ever and ever.
Yep.
And then just pray when you get into those tough, little valleys that you're going to go through. That prayer
Yeah.
got me through a lot of Kyle's medical stuff. Kyle, I don't even know that you know this, but he only had a 20% survival chance of surviving when he was
Wow.
born. And so he's really, and I just think, God puts people in certain places, and his dynamic personality is just, shown through all of the adversity that he's gone through. And he's changed other people's lives too. So
100%. He's changed mine.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. All right, so I want to move into the next part of our show here, Penny, and it is just takeaways from today. And so my whole favorite part of the show is, number one, talking with you about Kyle, because he's 25 and he's an old man now, which makes me really, really old. But just reliving some of those memories it's just good for my soul. Some of my takeaways are, number one, like Kyle is so loved, and that he was like just such a amazing kid for our inclusion movement, and how much he was loved and still is. Just how you had an expectation that kind of came out of fear when he was born, and how much he proved you wrong. And just how much you've had to advocate, and how exhausting that is, and how much farther we need to come in this society of creating opportunities for people to be independent, with supports. And hopefully someday, like, that will change, but it's going to be on the shoulders of, the parents and the people who know. And so that challenges me to just continue to grow and learn, and pushing forward with change in the areas that I am able to do that. So I'm wondering, did you get anything out of the conversation today? What were some of your favorite things we talked about?
Yeah, I think I didn't really realize like how impactful Kyle's, journey through middle school and high school was to you,
Yeah.
because I looked at you as like, okay, well, he's his Jen is his adapted phy ed teacher. I mean, that was kind of it. Like, I never really realized like how emotionally, I mean, I know you really liked Kyle, but I didn't really realize like how emotionally connected you get to your students,
Yeah.
and how impacted, probably Lindsay, Carly, and Kyle were, in
All
that
three.
season of life
Mm-hmm.
when he was there at the middle school and high school. So that's probably my biggest takeaway is, I guess, yeah, I didn't realize how it affects you as a teacher.
Yeah. And I truly like, Buffalo now has this this kind of view of from the outside. So just thinking back to Lindsay. So when Lindsay graduated, she went on to work for Special Olympics, and when they found out she had graduated from Buffalo, they like loved her, right? Because Buffalo has done so much. Like that's where we work, Buffalo. That's where you guys go to school. But the groundwork that we have done to be able to do that, like now people look at our programs because of kids like Kyle, and they, oh, you're a Buffalo kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so people come from all over to watch us and learn from us. And so Kyle was a big thing with that. So you can give Lindsay that piece too, that she was also kind of part of that, and Carly, all three of them, but they were all kind of part of that. So I'm just really grateful for our conversation, because I think I'm just thinking to some of my friends who are just getting their kids with Down syndrome, their diagnosis. I'm like, man, it'd be so great if I could just get you and Penny together and you guys can talk, but now I can just hand them, a link or send them a link, and just kind of be like, hey, you're not alone. They're here. Here's someone who's been through it. And so I'm really grateful for this conversation. And some of the things that we talked about today. So thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and walk through a few more things before I let our listeners go. Thank you again to Fit and Fun Playscapes. Pam, you have been such a rock star for us. Like I said earlier, you kept this mic on and the lights going for the last year so that we could have these amazing conversations. We've been able to bring teachers, OTs, higher ed friends on to be able to share some of these messages and heartfelt stories. The heart being the storytelling and the beat of our daily lives, the heartbeats of adapted PE podcast. We would not be here going into season 2 without you. So I just appreciate this whole season with you. So thank you for this year. And I know we're moving on to bigger and better things. But we just thank you for this year. Tomorrow, I will make an announcement on our future sponsorship for season 2. So look forward to that, friends, on social media. And speaking of social media, you can find us on X at Heartbeats of Adapted PE, on Blue Sky at Heartbeats of APE at bluesky.social. And you can always email us at heartbeatsofadaptedpe@gmail.com. And this podcast is available on YouTube. It will be put on the Health and Physical Education Collective, and it's also live right now on the Shape America YouTube page. So be on the lookout for those. You can also listen with the audio on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And with that is all I have. Thank you for a great first season to all of our listeners. We're going to season 2 in a couple weeks. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Penny.
Bye.